Hello,
Oh,
to the Bear Chocky T Wrestling Podcast. I'm the Bear. My colleague, as always, Big Chocky T. How the devil are you?
yeah, really well, Michael. It's been a long time. It's great to be back.
It has, yes, and this is our second attempt due to
Yes.
Skype being rubbish. So if you've never seen us before, we are the Bear and Chocky T. As I said, I'm the Bear, along with my co-host Big Chocky T. We talk about all things AEW, Impact. We go through the shows on a monthly basis. However, this one's a little bit special as we are 7 days removed from the biggest pay-per-view that AEW have done, not only during after the pandemic that's hit, but potentially since it started, which was All Out 2021. And it was just an amazing show. We'll get into it in a moment, but it was jam-packed from start to finish. And yeah, our last show has been a few months ago, and since then we've seen from both companies, we've seen debuts, departures, returns. We have seen live crowds come back. We've seen title changes. We've seen the debut of Rampage for AEW. And we've also, big shout out to NWA Empower, which have showcased some fantastic women's wrestling from the two companies that we cover, which is obviously, as I said, Impact and AEW. So big shout out to NWA and Mickey James for doing that. It's fantastic to see that, and well done to both Impact and AEW for being part of that, because all you can do is just showcase more and more fantastic wrestling, and that's what here to watch, and that's what they're here to do. So so before we get into it, I'd just like to speak beforehand about the Jonas Podcasting Network. Now, this network, as we say every month, we like to do a big shout out. This is from our friend and colleague John Scott. He has put together a incredible vast of knowledge and of creators on for podcasts and YouTube, and you can find them all on the Jonas Podcasting Network. As it currently stands, he's got an impressive over 40 podcasters, all coming together, bringing something completely new, all different. Whether you like your WWE, whether you like your Stardom, New Japan, Impact, AEW, watch-alongs, interviews, reviews like what we're doing today. No matter what your take on any type of wrestling, then that's the place to go. And I just want to give a shout out to the recent podcasts that have now joined the fantastic team. That's the Tornado Tag podcast. We've got the Buckle Bomb Entertainment podcast. We've also got Ringside Rant. We've got Champs Out Last podcast, Case Theory, Snap, Crackle and Cheap Pops, which I like, and Tea and Tights. We've also got what do you call it? Now, all these podcasts cover from, as I said, from you've got the likes of Canada, America, and the UK. So even if you like the indie scene or even just the British wrestling scene, we've got you covered. And as always, we are more than welcome to include more and more podcasts. So if you have a podcast and you do happen to hear this and you fancy getting involved and being part of a growing company, then by all means drop us a message and we'll pass it on and we'll go through the relevant channels to do it. But yeah, and so that's our little bit for the plug-in. Let's get on with it. So before we go on with the AEW card, I just wanted to post something that had been posted out this week. So allegedly, All Out reportedly did over 200,000 buys, which is the highest buy rate of a non-WWE wrestling pay-per-view since the late 90s. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. TK, Tony Khan, has been quite not mysterious about the figures. He's obviously knows it's done well, but yeah, he wasn't confirming anything. And also, to look at the ratings for Dynamite, I think last week were very high, and there's a lot of talk about the correct demos being here, and they were. So I would not be surprised if that was true. We'll get into the lineup of the pay-per-view. But yeah, based on that alone, based on how early I bought the pay-per-view personally, I bought it a good month before, it was even due. So yeah, I'm not surprised based on the excitement, and that's incredible. And that's a real milestone for the company, isn't it? But everyone kind of would look at this pay-per-view and say this is almost a new chapter for AEW. So how fitting that it might have reached a new milestone, with that as well. So yeah, I'm not that surprised. It's delighted me personally, but yeah, I actually can believe it.
And as like you said, we love watching AEW. We're not disparaging any WWE or anything like that. It's just that the type of wrestling that comes from AEW and Impact Wrestling is what we like, which is the more indie feel. And I feel that is what AEW bring. You've got a bit of mixture. Yes, they've got the money, they've got the glitz and glamour, but it isn't as polished as WWE's. And as I said, that's not a disparaging remark against WWE or any fans. I watch all the products. I love all the products, and there is something for everyone on all the shows. I'm not a marker out like that as regards. I'll hate on one. I really not. I do love all of them. WWE is what I got into, and then obviously WCW through that, and then as we've progressed through. So yeah, I think it can only do better.
Yes.
And the fact that they've now got a new show, as we said with Rampage, that has helped lead up to All Out, has done very, very well. The ratings on that has helped with the first show. Then you've got your CM Punk on there. You've got CM Punk on Dynamite, as you said. So over the last 2 to 3 weeks, they've hit over 1 million on 2 shows. One that's an hour long, and one that's 2 hours long. There's a lot of people that have said, "Oh well, WWE have done this amount of views for this show and this show, but they're 3 hours long or 2 hours long." And the comparison is you can't really you can't put a 3-hour show against a 1-hour show, and you can't put a 2-hour show against a 1-hour show because the viewers are going to be completely different. If it was a 3 and a 3 hour, if they were both 3-hour shows, then that'd be something different. But I think that people, like anything, we know ourselves that news is there for clickbait. News is there to get people talking. Look at all the people that post stuff on social media, on Twitter. I mean, look at the recent one that we've had with Kevin Owens, like how it was before with FTR and Young Bucks. It's to get people talking about it. And that's ultimately where it's down to. Whether or not it's true or not, it's just you'll click their post so they can get the viewerships and stuff like that. That's all it's down to. So no matter what it is, as long as you're enjoying the wrestling, it doesn't matter how many viewers there are. Ultimately. So, and if they're happy, then they're happy. So yeah, without further ado, let's delve into what I think the best AEW pay-per-view, even from the very start. And I know we've talked about Revolution before, but from top to bottom, this card was absolutely stacked. It had something for everyone. It had your moments, it had your bits, it had your matches where you could have a bit of a breather, so you weren't actually tired, you weren't burnt out or anything like that. So we started with the buy-in, which was the Jungle Express of Luchasaurus and Jungle Boy, and the best friends of Chuck Taylor, Orange Cassidy, and Wheeler Yuta, defeating the Hardy family office, which was Matt Hardy, Private Party, and the Hybrid 2. This was a really, really good match, I thought, as a buy-in, which also included the return of someone that I love to bits, and that was the Butcher. Always fantastic to see that guy in the ring, and obviously he's been out with surgery, and I'm glad to see he's back in the ring, glad to see he's okay. What did you think to this buy-in opener?
Yeah, it was a good buy-in, wasn't it? Like what you need is, we always say this, you need an exciting kind of fast-paced match, lots to highlight, lots of spectacular moments, and you've got some great guys in there to do it. Private Party never really let you down in terms of spectacular action. Hybrid 2, they can go as well. We all know that the best friends seem to be growing and growing every week now, with the new addition. And you had a lot of fan favourites in there, didn't you? Orange Cassidy is forever loved, and Lucha Express too. So you had the right people in there with the right kind of talent to light the crowd up. But the real story, I think, coming off this match is what other people have said, and I've seen online, is that the Lucha Express or, Luchasaurus, Jungle Boy, however you want to call them, I don't think they should have been in this match. I think they should have been in the tag team title match. Now we'll get to that, but yeah, that's my only criticism, and that's more of a generalized criticism. I don't think they should have been in the buy-in. I actually think they should have been more placed up the card because of their recent popularity. So maybe we can get to that when we talk about the tag team title match. But yeah, that would be my only thing, and that's not a criticism of the match at all. The match was very good, and it served its purpose well. But yeah, actually, I think in terms of the talent involved, I think those two, I think they've missed the trick with the timing of Lucha Express and those tag team titles. Anyway,
No, fine. Regarding the buy-in, like you've just said, there was talk that they, because of it being in Chicago, should they put the CM Punk match on to start with? That would it would hopefully attract people to buy it in, to buy into it.
Yeah.
But yes, Tony Khan has said at the end of the day, a buy-in, like the whole thing of people saying, "Oh, well, you shouldn't put a big match on for free." He doesn't see it like that. He doesn't see that it's a free match. It's part of the product. So if you're invested in the product, you'll buy it regardless. Yeah. And I do understand where he's coming from. There was also talk of the Casino Battle Royal being on the buy-in, but as we're going to talk about later on with a certain debut, I can understand why they want to hold off on that. But I mean, as you said, everyone's got their own views on it. Everyone's got their own take on it. But ultimately, they did what they thought was best. So we started. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, it's always trickier with the buy-in thing, isn't it? It's been a debate since WWE kind of introduced the idea of a kickoff show for free, isn't it? You're right. Like, what kind of do you put the free match on, but make it with a huge name? It's that interesting theory that I think I've said to you before, Johnny, that I don't believe that anyone watching it that time of night would change their mind after watching the kickoff. I think anyone who's already bought the pay-per-view is watching the kickoff. And maybe I'm wrong, but I don't know if there's enough evidence to suggest that one match would then change someone's mind completely. I don't know what's the chance of you watching this kickoff show and then go, actually, I will pay £20. I kind of think they've already made up their mind. Do you know what I mean? So I'd like to see, I don't know how they could do this. I'd like to see the moment of pay-per-view buys that happen during that kickoff show, during that hour or so. I'd like to see what the increase is, because in my mind, a pay-per-view is something you've got planned out in your mind already. It's a Saturday or Sunday night thing. You already know your plans. So I'm quite interested in general about kickoff shows and how much impact they really have on pay-per-view buy rates. Or is it just a way to get the talent on the card, I guess? So I'm not sure. I'd like to see that, and I could probably read into that, to be fair.
One that I heard online, which was actually quite an interesting one, was do the buy-in, and literally you'd have, you've got your 30-second gap or whatever between the end and the start of the show, and at that point, as you're about to come off the show to go on to, off the buy-in to go on to the show, CM Punk's music hits.
See, that's good, isn't it? Yeah, and that's what I mean. Maybe they need a hook, like that, to say keep.
I like that.
Yeah, I do like that. Yeah, I don't know. You know what I mean? I'm not wholly convinced that kickoff shows work with the idea of being like a buy-in, as it were. But either way, it's great content and it's free. I don't see it as a bad thing. I'm just probably convinced that it adds, people to buy pay-per-views. But
yeah. So we had a really good buy-in match, and then we started the actual pay-per-view itself with the AEW TNT Championship on the line, where we saw Miro take on Eddie Kingston, of which Miro continued his undefeated streak to retain the title in what was a very, very hard-hitting match. At points, you really, really thought Eddie Kingston was going to win this. A lot of people kicked off about the whole turnbuckle pad coming off and the referee not seeing the pin by Eddie Kingston, and then the referee coming back and saying, well, it's my job to keep that on. Now, if you're into wrestling, if you're a fan of wrestling, you know things like this happen many years. It doesn't matter what you've watched it in. Things like that with referee bumps or referee not looking at it always happens. But I think for me, I think the right person won. But I thought it was a fantastic, hard-hitting match. What about you? What did you think, Big Chocky T?
I actually really liked it. Yeah, Eddie Kingston only needs couple of weeks to make something watchable, doesn't he? You know, like I thought, how have I got so invested in this match that I barely knew about, you know, a couple of weeks ago? But I was, and he has come probably closer than most to beating Miro, and it was beautiful because it was that moment in wrestling that's so great where it does suspend your disbelief. None of us really thought he was going to do it, but we all actually thought he might, just for a second, you know, like, and that was great. I actually was quite defensive of the referee thing. I think that was great to play that in. It doesn't matter if he's a heel or face. The referee's supposed to do his job, you know, which I really like that, you know, they played into it. But yeah, it really gave me the feeling that Kingston was going to pull it off. And of course I knew he wasn't, you know, but the fact I was still tricked. So yeah, it was really good. And I think a lot of that is down to Kingston, and the crowd loves him so much, you know, and there was a really good like atmosphere going into that. And it showed Miro sometimes has to resort to that kind of thing, you know, to do it. It showed a weakness in him, you know, which is great. It gives a bit of a get out for both talents there. Hard hitting, like you said. There were some fantastic spots, and I really like the storyline that Kingston had figured out that Miro's neck was his like weakness. You know, what a cool little detail to pick up on. You know, why do you hate the tornado DT? You know, why do you hate this move? And I thought that was a lovely little detail, and I can guarantee that was all Eddie who'd like thought of that, you know, to put that in.
All from his previous match with Fuego, so
exactly that. So do you know what I mean? Like, I think they made an awful lot out of a little, basically. I think those two didn't have a lot of build, but they really made that quite special, actually. Yeah, it was great. Yeah.
And it helped with Eddie Kingston on the mic. Obviously, they were filling it all the way through from Dynamite to Rampage to All Out. I love the fact that Eddie Kingston broke the hold.
Yeah. Yes.
Game over hold, which you saw. Miro played that fantastically to the camera. The camera was put in a really good position to catch the anger and the shock from Miro when that happened, because the way that he talked on that, you were expecting, like anyone would, Kingston just to tap as he was about to break it, but he did a fantastic job there.
It was great. Yeah, Eddie Kingston's really good at making you feel stuff, you know, and everyone knows that's his talent, isn't it? His build up to when he fought John Moxley was probably one of my favourite builds to any title match, actually, you know, looking back on it. And that was mostly down to him and his fantastic mic work. So yeah, big fan of him. You know, we all know that he might not have been the most athletic man, but he doesn't have to be. He's got a real gift on the microphone. And he looks not like a regular guy, but, you know, like people get behind him, don't they? You know, and they thought he's going to take on this monster, this god. It was very much David versus Goliath. And yeah, it was a simple little story, but really well told, I think, actually.
Yeah, fantastic. And then we moved on to his one of his best buddies, John Moxley, in a match against Kojima. Now, we've seen Kojima in Impact, and it was really, really cool to see this come out of nowhere, partly because he's John Moxley's contract status with New Japan, the Forbidden Door. He's like saying, look, I've sent all these contracts over there. There's only a couple of people that want to have a go. There wasn't much of a build, but to be honest, I don't think it needed a build. You knew what you were going to get from it. It was, again, like the previous match we've just talked about. It was two guys that were there just to braid the living daylights out of each other. I thought Moxley winning was, again, the right thing to do. If you're going to have Kojima in there just for once, there's no point in letting him beat Moxley unless it's going to further a storyline, which we'll talk about in just a moment. But yeah, what do you think to this one?
Yeah, it was really good. You know, it's nice to see that even after he lost his IWGP title to Lance Archer, that relationship with New Japan Pro Wrestling continues for Moxley, you know, which is great. He's living out his dream of, you know, he's been very inspired by a lot of Japanese matches when he was young. So it's great to see him taking on a lot of these legends. The only disappointment I think a lot of people had, it was going to be Tanahashi. also from New Japan that he was going to face, I think, originally, and that would have been just something else. And I think the only other criticism wasn't of the match again, but like you just said, it was his mate. Like the two matches next to each other were similar. They were both one-on-ones, both hard hitting, and I think maybe they could have done with separating those two matches out slightly, because you're right, like people were naturally going, there's Kingston, there's Moxley. But yeah, it was a good Moxley match. The cozy lariat was quite well protected. I don't think he ever effectively got it off on Moxley, which gave him an
his other arm as well, didn't he? He didn't properly hit it. He used the left arm instead of his right arm.
Yeah, which was a lovely detail, and Moxley carries on, and he had to win because of what happened next. But, it continues to fascinate me, this open relationship with New Japan. I guess I just want to see more people other than Jon Moxley take on some New Japan talent, because it does seem a bit of a repeating kind of thing now, doesn't it? But it was a good match. It was solid. And yeah, I think, again, Mox continues to live out his dreams, really. He's facing a list of people he wants to face, so that's great.
I'm going to throw it to you. So what happened next then after the match?
Well, one of the best entrance themes ever starts to play. Minoru Suzuki has a fantastic entrance theme. It's a bit like Nakamura, in WWE. It's that kind of sing-along feel to it. It's very dramatic. Not the first time they faced off. There was a brilliant moment in New Japan where pretty much the same scene happened. And, Moxley, he's not afraid of anyone, but I think even he was kind of like, oh my God, here we go again. Knowing he had to face up to the legend that is Suzuki, he comes down to the ring. Basically, he doesn't have to say a word. We all know he's challenging Moxley, and then they go at it. Suzuki applies the kind of sleeper hold before finishing him with the gotch pile driver. Now, this wasn't a match, but he did put him out, basically, for the count, even after that long and quite hard match he just had. So it set up a match that we didn't have to wait very long for afterwards, but it was a great moment. And while everyone talks about the other appearances on All Out that we'll get to, this was also a great moment. This was also an appearance as such. Because they've had previous history, it didn't feel super fresh, but it was a good moment. Yeah. What did you think of the appearance?
To be honest, I was lucky enough to stay away from all social media. So when this happened, I lost it. I'm recently started getting into New Japan in the last 5 years. I don't know a lot about the older stuff. However, I've been watching some of the older stuff thanks to partly them putting free matches on YouTube from New Japan. And obviously it's helped with Ring of Honor, with the the Young Bucks, and before All Elite Wrestling came about. That helped. But yeah, I absolutely loved it. I can't believe he's 55.
He's such a legend.
Yeah,
that's what I mean. Like, age doesn't define him.
He doesn't look. He looks like he's in his 40s, early 40s. I'm in my early 40s, and I think he looks like the same age as me. But he was just like, you could. He's this is going to be really, really hard hitting match, because obviously we know both of them, especially them two. They're gonna be. It's going to be potentially a bit of a bloody match.
Yeah.
With what's happened in the past, and obviously with his history, but I absolutely loved it. I thought it was just fantastic, and I think with what happened on the show, on the card itself, it was good to happen in Chicago, because you've got that fan base. Everyone is going to lose it no matter what. I mean, you'll have a lot of quieter people. Some people will come out and they won't be as bothered, but the entire show, you didn't feel burnt out, even though it were a 4-hour show. Nobody actually felt very burnt out, and I thought that worked really, really well. But yeah, as you said, I just thought so far 2 fantastic thumbs up from me for the card. Oh, included buying 3, so apologies. So then we jumped on to the Women's World Championship match, where Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, was challenged by Chris Statlander, and the Doctor won. I thought this was going to be the way it would happen, but it was a fantastic match. Absolutely fantastic. with a bit of a nod to somebody that appeared later on from Britt Baker. If it weren't for the fact that we knew what was going to happen, it'd have been like, oh look there, she's passing it on to her husband or whatever. But yeah, I thought this was a really, really good match. What did you think?
Yeah, we kind of tweeted before that this could have been both ladies' best match in AEW, and I'm not sure if it was Britt's best match, but I would say it was Statlander's best match. She is a powerhouse, and she got to show a lot of that strength off. There were some really good moments, and I was quite pleased that although you had Jamie Hayter there and Reba/Rebel, it wasn't overrun the match, and ultimately Britt pretty much got the job done by herself using the Pittsburgh Sunrise, which was brilliant. And it was a good, solid match. I think I could have done it being perhaps a little bit longer. I wanted it to be a real epic, where everything gets brought in, and I wanted Britt to really feel pushed to the limit by Statlander. I think obviously they've got other challenges in mind, and maybe that's why it didn't feel like super epic. But yeah, for both women, it was probably, I said definitely Statlander's best match. Britt, I still think Britt's finest moment is Thunder Rosa. It's hard to top that, isn't it? Their rivalry still feels to me like the best like they've got out of each other. But yeah, it was a really good match, and not overrun by any interference, which it could have been quite easily. And Britt looked very strong coming out of that because of that. And she continues to be, she says the baddest bitch on the block. She looks the part, doesn't she? Now she's really believes in herself now. You can see that, the confidence is there. And Chris, just gets better and better. I think it was her challenging Nyla Rose in this position, I want to say last year, or maybe everything feels a bit fuzzy with the pandemic, but, and Chris seemed completely different then. The two athletes now, they've kind of moved slightly away from the alien stuff a bit more, made her a bit more grounded, and that's helped by being with the best friends. And I think that's the right balance to strike with her. So, a really good, solid match, I would say.
Chris Statlander's first loss since her return after injury.
Oh, there you go.
And she's done, I think it's something like 16 matches.
Yeah, well, that's great, isn't it? Her, yeah.
I might be wrong with that stat, but she's done a fantastic array of matches in that process. So we went on to what me and you debated possibly the best match of the card, if not of AEW, and that was the Lucha Brothers taking on the Young Bucks in a steel cage for the tag titles. Wow.
Yeah, wow, yeah. What do you say? What do you think?
I mean, that's the second, as it's stated on the pay-per-view, it's the second time Luchas have beat them at All Out.
Yes, that's true. Yes.
It was in the ladder match for the AAA tag belt, was it?
Yes. Right? Yeah. It was. It's.
Oh.
Yeah, I was just going to say, yeah, you're right. Like, it's
19.
They are just, those two teams have tremendous chemistry. I'm sorry, I'll go back to you, but I was just going to say, it's just, the Escalada de la Muerte, the ladder match they had at All Out probably remains my favorite tag team match. And you kind of think if they ever fight again, if they have a rematch, where the hell do they go from here? Do you know what I mean? Like, would it have to be some kind of tables, ladders, and chairs match? I wouldn't even know how to top this now. It feels almost untoppable. Actually, I think they've almost reached the peak of like tag team wrestling in AEW. But anyway, sorry, Charlie, you go ahead. What did you think?
No, it's fine. I think you're right. If people are new to the product, these guys have wrestled each other so many times, and now it's getting to the point where they know everything about themselves. It's like they're wrestling themselves. As I said, they're fine-tuned so well. That's why they put them on Dynamite. That's why they put them on Rampage. That's why they were in here. For the first proper pay-per-view feel after the pandemic, you have to go, pardon the pun, you have to go all out.
Yeah.
And I think by doing this card like they did, I think they've done very, very well. I mean, just everything from the way that the demeanour of the Young Bucks has been all building up, even before me and you had a bit of a break, from the very start of their title reign all the way up, has been fantastic. I've loved watching them. They are a team you love to hate, as we always used to say. And as we say now, just everything about them. The fact that the thumbtacks on the bottom of the shoe when they did the super kick, the work rate, the choreography between all four playing off each other, where one would get thrown over someone else and then turn that into a Canadian destroyer or some kind of sunset flip or anything like that. I mean, these guys I can watch all the time. As you said before, there's a reason why they're on pay-per-view. Yes, you could say Young Bucks are very overexposed, but there's a reason that they are a workload. You can say that about many other people, but there's a reason why these are at the front of the tag team division, because they help elevate other people. This isn't an elevation match because obviously both teams are very good, but on the weekly shows, on other shows, like whether they're fighting the numerous teams that they've got, like as I said, we've got Jurassic Express, we've got Best Friends, we've got the Hardy Compound, if you want to call it that. You've got Butcher and Blade, you've got Private Party, you've got Varsity Blondes. Whoever they're with, it will only help them be elevate that team if they need a bit more exposure. And I think the result was correct to do, because there is nowhere else they can go. It was a good thing to do, which means that we can get a lot more teams involved now. Young Bucks can still be sat there simmering background, but they can help elevate other teams, like they did when they got beat by Private Party when they first started with the tag team tournament. No one expected that, but it was a way to elevate other people, and they can sit there and be like, this is how you should work, tweak this, tweak that. And I think what they've done, for me personally, I think what they did regarding the match was very, very good. I liked the pulling of the masks off, because obviously that's synonymous to their culture, that's to their heritage, and obviously being heels, Young Bucks are trying anything to stifle the Lucha's chances of winning the belts, which obviously they did. It's fantastic to see. Yeah,
I think it was the right result. The Lucha Bros. One of the reasons I actually fell in love with AEW was the Lucha Brothers, and I remember watching, actually on the way to work, watching them versus SCU, and just thinking, this is unbelievable. This is so good. I'd never seen them before. And I was so impressed. And a lot of people will go back to the first ever tag team title winners, which were SCU, and say that it should have been the Lucha Brothers. And I actually, to this day, think that might have been the right call. They've been in AEW a long time now. They are one of the originals. And they hadn't won the belts to this point. It was seen as almost a bit of a travesty that arguably they're the best tag team in the world, but they hadn't really dethroned the Young Bucks. It was exactly the right time to finish the Young Bucks' reign. I think they said something like 10 title defenses. I'm not sure if that's accurate, but either way, they've had a very long run. And but it was so simple storytelling. Like the Elite, week in, week out, would interfere. Let's get a cage so they can't do that. And that was brilliant. And everyone probably suspected that they would somehow still have the hijinks, which they did, with the shoes. Brandon Cutler was still there. But it gave them a reason to not have any further interference. And yes, exactly the right result. But to come back to my earlier point, I'm really happy they did win it. And someone had to beat the Young Bucks. But maybe, just maybe, should it have been Lucha Express?
You were up.
Jurassic Express.
You were on about this at the beginning, so what's your take on this then?
They had an opportunity against the Young Bucks and the crowd was super hot, and then they went into the tag team tournament. I thought, no, they're not going to win it because they've just had this opportunity. So straight away, I feel like that ruined that kind of storyline. I almost knew that the Lucha Brothers were going to be the ones to advance to the finals against the Young Bucks. I just think that as good as the Lucha Brothers are, and they really are, I feel like Jurassic Express was super hot, and they'd had all that stuff where they were playing basketball with in the backstage area, the crowd are really behind Jungle Boy, and I feel like he's had his moments too. I guess you could argue that both teams were due a tag team title win. Both are originals, essentially, and both have had several chances of getting this far, but let's not forget we've had FTR, Kenny Omega and Hangman, and SCU all as champs as well. And when you think about that, you think, maybe these teams should have had this chance earlier, or I don't know, perhaps maybe a three-way title match which would have defended the Young Bucks as well. Perhaps they could have lost the belts without being pinned. But I love the Lucha Brothers, but yeah, something about the timing of it. And let's not forget, it's been a little bit confusing with the Lucha Brothers, the kind of heel-face dynamic. Death Triangle one day, then not with Death Triangle. You know, Penta is clearly a heel, Phoenix is clearly a face. So something about the timing of those two. I'm not saying they don't deserve to win it, but perhaps not at this pay-per-view. Perhaps they could, you know, taken on.
I agree with that. I actually agree with that. Jurassic Express, they are hot. I think Lucha Brothers are that type of tag team that don't need the belts.
Yeah, so that could
build somebody else. I mean, I'm not saying that they can't have good matches because they are fantastic, but like what they did with Darby Allin, like what they did with Lance Archer with the TNT title, they're already established. So if you're wanting to use that indie vibe and building other people up, then give it to somebody else. And I think you're right. Jurassic Express are at that point where it's time to give them the belts, because if they lose, it doesn't matter. But it'll elevate them a bit more and people will be more invested, which they are already. And the fact that they've been coming out to help Christine Cage, and we obviously saw help from somebody, which we'll speak to later on, speak about some later on. It's just a bit...
Yeah, like what was the build between the Lucha Brothers and Young Bucks this time? Nothing. They were just involved in the tournament. But the Jurassic Express and Young Bucks felt quite personal. They had their backstage moments, didn't they? They had where they were sitting down watching them. It felt like that was more of the storyline. And then suddenly we're like, oh, but now it's Lucha Brothers. You know, and I think, okay, they've got a great rivalry, but they didn't spend any time building that rivalry back up again, did they? We barely saw any rehype of the ladder match. You know, we could have seen more of that. And they did it, but almost last minute. And I think that was the only thing. I just thought it was odd that maybe the wrong tag team. Again, I can't say they don't deserve it. They absolutely deserve it. It was a fantastic match. But yeah, looking at the build, you think it would have been Jurassic Express. That would have been.
So yeah, absolutely. So next we went on to the 21-woman Casino Battle Royal. We got a lot of familiar faces. We got a lot of old people that have come back because of the pandemic. We've been able to bring back a lot of people, and we got to see somebody who is, which I posted out, in my mind, the biggest and best independent wrestler before she went to WWE, and they've signed her now. Ruby Soho came out as the Joker, got right down to her and Thunder Rosa, and Ruby Soho took the win, which means that she will be having a title match against Britt Baker down the line. Now, whether or not it's going to be the first for Britt Baker, or whether she's going to sit in the wings, a bit like a Money in the Bank type of thing, where she'll have it at some point down the line, not just the first defense against her. But as we've seen on Dynamite, we've already seen a build towards that because of the 3-on-1 attack. And Rhea and Chris Statlander coming out to do the save for Soho. Some fantastic names in there. What were your highlights? What did you think of the Battle Royal?
Yeah, I still don't know about this Casino Battle Royale format. You know, it feels gimmicky, doesn't it? I love the women's side of AEW, and I think they're in a really good position now, better than they probably were a few months back. But I've got to say, this was my least favourite match on the card. You know, I happened to be watching this one with my wife as well, and she was just pointing out that although there were so many people in the ring, nothing of note was happening a lot of the time, and I have to agree with that. And I think we all kind of knew. I think the problem with this Joker thing is, you know, it's going to be someone big, and you're waiting for that. And ultimately, although when it happened with Leo Rush, she didn't actually win it, you kind of also know that might be a winner too. You know, so I think it's kind of flawed waiting for a big moment like that, you know, because no one's really focused on it. It was great to see people like Big Swole in there. You know, there was a Riho back. There was some nice appearances in there. But ultimately, I can't look back at that match and go, was there any one moment, apart from the appearance of Ruby Soho, that I really remember? And the answer is no, which I find quite sad. I enjoyed watching Jade Cargill's dominance. Nyla Rose looked like she was having a great time in there, you know, as the monster heel. But for me, this was one of the weakest things they put out, actually, because Yeah, maybe it's the concept. Maybe it's the nature of the concept. But I have to say, it didn't feel memorable at all. And I was a little bit disappointed. And the only reason it wasn't considered a failure in my mind was the appearance of Ruby Soho. And I felt like they built the whole thing around that rather than trying to make a decent match and have that on top.
Yeah, I can't comment any other than what you've just basically put it all in a nutshell. It was, as you said, it was great to see some people like the new signings from Kira Hogan. We've got Sky Blue. And then we've got your originals like not I'll say originals, but you had like Diamante, you had Abaddon in there, you had Anna Jay come back, which was cool. But yeah, it was a good match. But I agree with you. As a card, that would be the weaker of all of them, unfortunately. But that doesn't say that it wasn't a bad match.
No.
We must stress that because it wasn't. We then went on to the final fight. Jericho defeating MJF in a match that I think should have gone the other way. Now, I'm going to say why I feel this, and I'll pass it over to you. So obviously, Chris Jericho's got Fozzy. Forget Fozzy because he's off on a tour. This, that, and the other. So the way that the match ended, if you didn't see, or originally ended, was that Chris Jericho had his foot on the rope and MJF got the win.
Yep,
that's how we called it. Now, for me, to carry on the storyline, even though Chris Jericho, according to social media, said that's it for the storyline, I would have said that MJF to win, Chris Jericho disappears, does his thing, and then that's your storyline for why he's coming back and saying, look, you may have beat me, but you didn't beat me cleanly. So technically, you didn't win. Mm-hmm. And that's your angle. That way you could bring it. I mean, you've got 3 months in which to play with that because he's going to be touring with Fozzy. That's not an issue. Yeah. You've got time to work that in, but it's not something like you're going to work it. You've got to sort it out by the following night. But for me, to have him win once, and MJF beat him twice, 3 times, for Jericho to come out saying that's the feud over, I don't know if that was the right call. What about you?
Sorry, yeah, I think that's pretty accurate, isn't it? First of all, there was debate about whether or not they should have even had this match. You know, they had already fought that many times, and the last time they fought, I thought it was fantastic that MJF won. But you all know that Jericho sees a lot of himself in MJF, and his job ultimately is to put him over. And he's done it many times, you know, and I'm not saying I wanted to see Jericho retire, but we all know, like, he could go on to commentary. We all know he's got the irons in the fire. And if there was a night to do it, probably should have been that night. You know, I think if they would have let the finish happen as it was, Aubrey Edwards is very loved. And I don't think they would have let her take, like, the blame for it. Do you know what I mean? But the only thing I quite liked was the fact that Wardlow's involvement and then the other referee being there allowed a second ref to get a view on it, which is a very original idea. I don't think I've ever seen that. Like a ref being, you know, by accident almost, and he just happens to like be looking. I actually thought that was really good. MJF this week blamed Wardlow, you know, in his segment with Brian Pillman Jr. You know, he actually made a point of saying, you know, that was your fault. Are you going to do that again? Do you know what I mean? Like, so I like that, you know, because it gave him an out as well. But you're quite right. I don't. Why did he have to win it? You know what I mean? Really,
it's like being in a race and you come in third, but you're the winner. It makes no sense. I just don't get me wrong. I love them both in the ring. I love both what they bring. I just think if you're going to end it there, then why not end it with the blood and guts?
Yeah, and also that's a good point. This was a standard one-on-one match. You've just been through the 5 labors of Jericho and blood and guts. Yeah, how was this the end of a feud? It wasn't. It was just another match. It was probably one of the best matches they've had. You know, you had moments like the moonsault from MJF, you know, from the ropes. You had some Jericho pulling out some interesting stuff from his past. You know, and I didn't mind it at all. I actually thought it was a pretty decent match. No. It was, to be fair, I think I was already not loving the idea of this match going into it because I was like, oh, the final fight. Like, I don't believe stipulations like this. The Young Bucks did the same thing before. We'll retire. We'll never challenge again. No one actually believes that. This is wrestling. No one retires. You know, like, never.
Where?
HBK, I wish he'd have stayed retired. I love him, but he's come back and come on, like Flair, like everyone, like no one buys that retirement thing. I'm sorry. MJF though, he hasn't come off bad of it. He's already done that damage, I think, and his segment this week was absolutely brilliant. I encourage everyone to go see it. He's not lost any momentum from that. I guess it was a feel-good ending, to the feud. Really, you can't really have him beaten 3 or 4 times, I guess. But you're right, he had an out there. But is Chris Jericho the kind of person to whinge about an unfair loss as a face? Not sure. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, you make some good points. And I just think, like you, they could have already finished this, already. It felt one match too many, maybe.
Yeah. We then went on to, with 3 matches remaining, we went on to the one that was the most anticipated to see. We saw, after a 7-year absence, a in-ring debut and return to in-ring action of the one and only CM Punk as he took on Darby Allin. Now, I'm going to switch it a little bit. How must you have felt being told that you are going to face CM Punk? The equivalent of saying you're going to face Sting.
Oh my God.
What must have been he's still in his 20s. Allen, and being told that you're going to face somebody that's an icon in wrestling.
What an honor. What an honor. He was
his first match, yeah.
He was clearly handpicked by Punk, for all the reason, the fact they're both straight edge. He kept saying how he would have been a fan as a young man of Darby. He was picked for that. So I think some of that pressure would have come off him, knowing that he had that respect already. And I think Darby, being the kind of crazy cat he is, he probably took a lot of it in his stride, because he's done some insane things. But at the same time, yeah, I'd love to have seen his build up to that match and his reactions to it, and what he really thought was going on. Like the honest Darby Allin, I wanted to feel that, because you're right. What pressure on him, to help that along on both of them. But yeah, especially on Darby, who can be relied upon to bring out pretty much the best in everyone, just because he sells so well, at everything he does. But anyway, so we'll get back to that.
No, that's fine. Yeah. I just thought I'd ask your opinion on that, because obviously everyone does the same thing. What was your view on this match? I just wanted to spin it a little bit and just be a little bit different. Just if that was me, it's the equivalent of going out and it's your first on a pay-per-view or even in front of a televised show, and it's your first match. You don't want to mess up, and you're going against somebody like CM Punk, especially someone like that, who, watching this match, did not lose a step.
I think the pressure was on both of them, but probably more pressure on Punk, wasn't it? Everyone was watching to see what he'd be like, and you're right, he did not lose a step. So Darby might have felt a little bit better, thinking, actually, the focus is more on Punk than it is on me, in this match. But yeah, sorry, carry on. It was. This match, I'm going to say.
Yeah, I love the attire that he came out to. He then, obviously, over the time, he then came out to do It's Now Clobbering Time, which everyone knows about. Obviously, in the past, he was like, not yet, wait. And I thought that just all the little tweaks I thought was really, really good. I'm a massive CM Punk mark. Again, as we've talked about, we've been watching wrestling for pretty much 30 years, no matter where, what. Everyone knows that name. Everyone knows what he's done, what he's been doing, what he hasn't done. And just the fact that of having the cult of personality, the fact that the Living Colour had tweeted him going, we've got your theme music sorted, don't worry about that, mate, before he even signed with AEW, was just beautiful, was just genius. And the fact that all they've done is slightly tweaked the beginning bit to make it more of a staticness compared to what it was in WWE it was just beautiful. And then again, the match lived up to what it was. It didn't have to go overboard. It wasn't slow. Both of them were allowed to take control in the match. Both of them felt at times where they were vulnerable. Like there was times where Darby Allin really looked like, could this, like we talked about with the Miro match, could this be the one? Could he actually do this? But you knew it won't. But it was nice to have that feeling, because you don't want to watch a match where you just go, well, what's the point? We know who's going to win. But they brought you in, they made you feel that you were invested, they made you sit on the edge of your seat, wishing and going, oh, "Is this going to happen? Oh, he's done this, he's done that." Like when Punk threw him into the corner turnbuckle and he fell out. Just as you said, Darby Allin selling stuff. I mean, he needs to be careful, as we've talked about this on this show before. He needs to be careful because he's going to be in his 30s in a wheelchair if he doesn't ease off a little bit. But I can't say the only thing I can say is if you haven't watched the match, one, why?
Yeah.
Two, just go watch it. Yeah. Us talking about it doesn't do justice. It's Punk back to what he was, and then obviously on Dynamite he's looking at the feuds for further on down the line, which is there's a lot of people out there like we've talked about before, which is going to be fantastic. So all I can say is that it's a fantastic return to in-ring competition from Punk. I'm glad I was able to see it, and I'm glad that it was with someone like Darby Allin.
Yeah, me too. I felt relief, I think, like a lot of Punk fans would, that he looked so good, and there was obviously like almost nerves on my part that I wanted him to be like just as good as he was. And he looked fantastic. He really did. He hadn't missed a step at all. And everything in that match, I think you summed it up. You said it wasn't overboard. It was just the right amount. Starting with like the hammerlock combination that Darby held on for so long, and I love to see a proper bit of chain wrestling, in there. And then you had moments where, he got absolutely torpedoed out, hitting his, I think, shoulder or head on the side of the turnbuckle.
Yeah.
Oh my god! And then that brilliant moment where he set up Undertaker to avoid the coffin drop. So Punk avoided the coffin. Moments like that. This is what I mean. Compared to that barrier, I can remember so much of that match now, 7 days later, compared to some of the other things. And I had a smile on my face the whole way through. I genuinely enjoyed it, actually enjoyed that all the way through. And I don't think I had a doubt who the winner was, but it really didn't matter. I probably couldn't have picked a better opponent for him because, purely because Darby knows how to make everyone look so good. You can do so much for him. He's very light, he's very agile. But it was just great to see, and I was so shocked at how good Punk looked. Actually, he genuinely looked like he hadn't missed a beat, and I think that was a big concern. Some people come back and you think, okay, they're not quite the same. I mean, 7 years is a long time, but he really didn't look. And you were right in what you were saying. Cult of personality, everything about the imagery and logos, it's the same. It's exactly the same Punk. He's always been smart enough to keep his name. He hasn't had to change any of that presentation. And we all know how good that moment was on Dynamite Rampage when he made his first appearance back. Goosebumps. It was a fantastic match, and it just carried on that momentum. I think I worry now that second match couldn't be as good. His next match, it's difficult to see that match being beat, and it didn't have to be spectacular. It was just solid. Everything was snug. The headlocks, everything looked as good as it should do. And if I wanted to show someone a professional wrestling match, I'd probably pick that one, because it was just really tight. I think that's the only way I can describe it. No wasted motion. Everything was efficient, and they sold for the right amount. I'm going on about it because I love it.
Right. It's right. Yeah, there was a purpose for everything. There was no what's the word? Slow down of everything. And if it did slow down, there was a reason it slowed down. It wasn't like people were burnt out or forgot what they were doing or just not working very well together. It was just there was a reason why the headlock was there. There was a reason why this and as you said, it's me and you being who we are get very emotional regarding certain things like this, and it just brings out the fanboy in us, which in my thought is I don't care. I really don't care. So we're going to just quickly run through this next match. A lot of people thought this match should have come on earlier, but I think this is the right place to have put it. You've just come off a CM Punk match. Your next match would have been Kenny Omega. You're going to be burnt out. So to put Paul White to face QT Marshall there was a good separator, just to what's going to happen. You're just going to have a laugh and a joke with it. You don't need to be too invested in it. And for that to be, as people call it, the toilet break, or I'm going to go have a break now, that isn't deemed a bad thing. It was you can't have too much happen all in one go, because especially with the debuts that happened at the end of this next match, the feeling won't be there. They'd be too exhausted. So Paul White defeated QT Marshall in a match that we knew that was going to happen. It was there for the sake of it. Again, it's not really anyone is bothered about. It was nice to see Paul White back in the ring. QT Marshall just being QT Marshall. But ultimately, it was just a throwaway match just for people just to have a breather.
Yeah, I absolutely spot on. Not really a lot to add to that. Paul White did look good. I think I feel a little bit bad for him because you're right. Like, he had that moment, and it probably wasn't as big a moment as he would have preferred it to be. You know, that was quite a big in-ring comeback for him as well. But yeah, exactly that. It was in, like you said, the toilet break spot that unfortunately back in WWE back in the day, a lot of the women's matches would find themselves in. But you're right. Yeah, it was a good, well-paced card, and it has to happen like that. You have to cool them down and heat them up. You know, and you're right. You could not have just carried on that momentum from that Punk match, which arguably could have been the main event. So yeah, spot on. You know, it had to happen to someone, and that was the perfect place to do it, I think. So yeah.
So then we ended on Kenny Omega defeating Christian Cage to retain the AEW World Championship. This was the right call. Obviously, in the past, since we've been away, we've seen Kenny Omega losing the Impact and TNA title, which has then resulted to Christian Cage, which has then resulted in Christian Cage retiring the TNA title just to have the Impact title itself. So to move forward with times, obviously, Moose brought it in to be the old champion and the new champion, where he was facing Rich Swann, and then obviously Rich Swann took both belts. It's basically the unification of belts, but instead of that, they've just retired it. I thought this match was very, very good. Christian Cage stepped up for me to go toe-to-toe with Kenny Omega. I never felt that Christian was out of his depth, especially with the way that Kenny Omega wrestles, the pace of it, and then you have that quite nasty table spot where it looked like if it had been a few inches to the left, it could have been quite nasty for Christian. But obviously, as I said, Kenny Omega defeats Christian to keep the belt. For me, I thought that was a fantastic match. What about yourself?
It was a really good match. Yeah, I think I've seen reports that the crowd were a little bit quiet. And again, you know, during the intros, I did feel like they'd needed a bit more time to heat up, which they did as the match went on. And I kind of made that comment as I was watching it to myself. I was like, give it time, and this crowd will be eating this up by the end of it. And I think they took a little bit of time to come alive. Again, I don't blame them. Yeah, because that Punk match was, it took a lot of out of everyone, including me. But yeah, it was really good. The best thing they did was have Christian win the title off Kenny before, the Impact title, or whatever it is now, and that was a great bit of double business, wasn't it, really? It gave a legitimate threat to Kenny, and it allowed Christian to be the champion elsewhere, which was great. He did look great in that. I think during the match sometimes he looked a little bit dominated by Kenny, but he had his moments, he had his spots. The table spot, it didn't seem to quite hit the middle of the table, but there were some other good moments. Kenny unfortunately slipped. He tried to do a moonsault off the guardrail, but that was a very complicated move to try and do. I don't blame him for that at all. No one ever would. And then he quickly then kind of realized that, made a joke of it, did it again, spot on, and these things happen. But yeah, it was a good match. Omega is at his like peak at the moment of playing like kind of heel, chicken shit, coward champion. I think, and this played into that brilliantly. It's absolutely the right result. We all know that there's people coming down the line that will challenge Omega. We've talked about this a lot. And I don't think anyone in the right mind thought Christian was going to do it twice, and strip both belts off him. Me and you have talked a lot about how we saw Omega's demise. None of that's really come to pass yet. It's kind of not gone the way we thought it might, and there's been reasons for that. But again, that's exciting. Every time we think we've got something right, AEW does tend to mix it up.
I'll put this out to you now. Once Kenny Omega loses the AEW belt, I think me and you should sit down and do a fall and rise of Kenny, rise and fall of Kenny Omega, going through his title matches, title defenses, and just see where he's tweaked, and like as there's been times in the past where he started to lose it a little bit. I think that'd be quite interesting to have a look down memory lane of what's happened with him. But yeah, it was a fantastic match. Obviously, Kenny Omega wins.
One more thing. Sorry, just to say.
Go ahead.
I really liked that they didn't make it too much about Omega Christian. They actually made it more about Don Callis and Christian and their relationship. And I thought that was brilliant. I loved the stuff between them two. It was legit to a point. There was real history between them. So I actually thought that was really fresh, and I enjoyed the lead up to that match because of that.
I liked the one on a Dynamite where he turns around and goes, I brought Christian in. At this time, I've known Kenny since he was 10, and then he just turns around and just goes, "You were friends with a 10-year-old boy." and then Kenny Omega coming out with the, "You think you know me?" And it was just like, oh my god! And then to find out that if it wasn't for the Edge Brood Gangrel at SummerSlam, they'd have had Gangrel. And according to a show that I'm a fan of, Cultaholic, Ross Tweddell has interviewed a straight tell with Gangrel. You go watch it if you've not seen it, or even subscribe to the channel. And he talks about the fact that Edge apparently apologised to say, "Look, I'm sorry if I'd have known this was going to happen. But it basically stopped you from coming onto Dynamite because Tony Khan didn't want to then look like they were capitalising on it."
Yeah, I'd seen that story too, and I didn't have any idea that's how it went down. And you can only imagine how Gangrel felt. He probably felt like he let a lot of people down as well. I don't know who would have predicted that happening. It was very cool to see Edge, have that entrance. But yeah, it's also a shame that they couldn't have seen Gangrel on AEW. But I suppose if I had to pick between Edge making a fantastic entrance at SummerSlam and Gangrel on AEW, yeah, I'd probably gone with Edge. It was quite the moment. We all know that. It was a great moment. But yeah, it's just funny how these things go sometimes. But anyway.
And then obviously at the end we had the promo where he's like, "I've beaten everyone. I've beat people. Who's going to basically come back. The people that are dead." And as soon as that hit, everyone was just like, "Ooh!" And then Adam Cole's music hit. His stream came across, and everyone lost it, almost to the point of what a CM Punk it was. And him coming out was just fantastic, and everyone thought, because of what's happened, everyone thought he was going to go after them, and then he just super kicks Jungle Boy and aligns with the elite team, and you just lose it. And then literally within 30 seconds, the one and only Bryan Danielson, formerly Daniel Bryan, comes out as well, and to do 2 debuts in that space of time, I mean, come on.
Yeah. What your reaction to it? Because I think that's everyone's. Sorry, I think that's everyone's reaction to it. Yeah, like no one could quite believe that they would be audacious enough to put off 2 debuts like that in the space of 10 minutes, but it was perfect because, again, like, I think you need to send the fans home happy a lot of the time. We'd seen this elite dominance, we'd seen the return, the elite is now complete. We won't talk too much about Adam Cole's backstory with Kenny and the Young Bucks, but needless to say, they're very good friends. They traveled the roads together a lot. They were formerly in the Bullet Club together, but because of the way Adam left the Bullet Club, yeah, people did have that natural history in mind, which was brilliant. But I'm glad he joined with the Elite. Massive Adam Cole fan. One of the reasons I did continue to watch NXT for a little while along with the Undisputed Era. And, for months now, I've been watching that contract situation with his. So I was really, really, really pleased to see him come, because genuinely, being such a professional that he is, I thought he was going to stay with the competition. I really did. I'm sure he had a very tempting offer. And he said now why he did it, but it's really nice to see that he's gone with, his friends, people that he's trusted, and to see him reunited, it makes me smile. But somebody brought even a bigger smile. Yeah, Bryan Danielson. He's got a natural infectious energy, and he's honest. Sometimes too honest. You know, he's got a real honesty about why he was there. Now, I don't know if anyone caught his kind of post promo that they didn't show on the pay-per-view, but they did for the fans. And Bryan had a very passionate speech about why he was there, and he ends it with a "Let's fucking go!" You know, it was like a rallying cry for him and AEW. And this is what I mean about like a new chapter. It felt like a moment to say, "This is it now." You know, we were fighting and we were gaining ground, but now the real war begins. You know, I don't want to make it about company versus company, but it felt like a statement of intent from Bryan, and you can see he's delighted. You know, to be there, you can see he's naturally happy. Same with Cole. And this is the thing, isn't it? Everyone who comes over, oh, look at this, they're happy. Look how happy Ruby Soho was. She was smiling on entrance. She was smiling afterwards. Everyone seems happy to be there. And what an experience, what a moment.
So there's two things. One, I'm going to pass to you in a moment. So a lot of people go on about, oh, look, AEW are buying WWE stars and this, that, and the other. Right. This podcast isn't about dissing a company. This podcast isn't about bringing people down. We have openly stated that this is a positive podcast. Yes, we can complain about certain things. That's not an issue. But there's one thing that I need to bring up. All the people that are going on about how AEW are getting WWE talent. Okay, one, they're independent contractors. Two, they need a job. So you're basically saying that you don't want someone to have a job, someone to have an income. That's not good. And then the other one is, how many people have WWE got from New Japan, Ring of Honor, TNA?
Yeah. Look at what happened with NXT a few years back now, when you had Balor, Steen, Kevin Steen, Kevin Owens, you know, Nakamura, you know, Samoa Joe, Sami Zayn. You had this incredible glut of indie talent, and everyone could feel that change in the industry happening. I thought, oh my God, this is the end of like the glory days of these indie stars. And now it's kind of happening again. You know, so it's turnaround is fair play in my mind. You know what I mean? It's the same thing happening, isn't it? And to your point, they aren't just picking up WWE stars for the sake of it. They're picking up the best people you could. Oh my God, Bryan, Punk, and Cole. Do you know what I mean? Within a month? You're not just picking up any old person. You're picking up some of the best wrestlers in the world. And I really thought about this today. I thought, look at the active roster they've got right now. That's the best in the world, in my mind.
We've talked about the whole thing of people like AEW pooing on WWE and WWE pooing on AEW and Impact and stuff. Forget the companies. They're a platform. You're there to watch the wrestling. Okay? So if that person ended up going to your local swimming club to put on a show, you're telling me you're not going to go watch Miro. You're telling me that you're going to forego going to watch someone like that because you think that they should be loyal.
Yeah,
there are people out there that work on way less just because it's a job, and ultimately the platform is AEW and Impact, Stardom, New Japan, WWE. They're not the wrestlers. The wrestlers are what are bringing people in to watch the product. So ultimately, if you can have a job anywhere, doesn't matter where it is, as long as you're happy. Now, obviously, if people are not happy, then that's fair enough. If things change, like obviously we've heard recently that Brian Cage is not 100% happy with how he's slowed down the card. Fair enough. I get that. I understand that. I appreciate that. But you've also got people that are being elevated thanks to the likes of Dark Elevation, Rampage, Dynamite as well. And then obviously you've got your pay-per-views, you've got your social media and everything like that's helped. So I think fans are fickle. We all are, you know, especially if a wrestler turns face or heel or whatever, or you're not liking how they are. It's how we are. But I just think we need to remember that ultimately these people are there to enjoy what they do and to pay their way and to get a paycheck. They're not getting a paycheck if they're sat at home with no job.
Yeah.
You know, how awful would it be if you went into Target Sports or Costco and you saw Adam Cole serving pizza behind counter, you'd be awesome, but you'd also go, dear God, he's fallen, hasn't he?
Yeah.
So,
the more companies, the better. It's more opportunities, and competition has never been a bad thing. And I've always thought, surely this brings out the best in all companies, like it did, back in the day with WCW. We all know that competition is a good thing. We all know that WWE needed some strong competition, to do that and to give more of a choice. A monopoly in general is a terrible thing in any industry. So to have a legitimate competition, gives everyone an opportunity to work, but it also should bring out the best creatively out of both companies, and I think everyone wins, don't they? I mean, you're quite right. I just said it myself. I'd watch NXT, for Adam Cole. I wasn't going to be that AEW loyal that I wouldn't consider watching something else because I wanted to watch the talent. Do you know what I mean? Not the company. So I think that's to say that, really. And I think that brings back to my point. Like, you can say they're ex-WWE, or you could say these are amazing signings. That's it. Do you know what I mean? That's why people are watching them, because of what they do, not who they are, I guess.
So you brought up one point which we'll finish on, and that is, did All Out need the debuts?
Yeah.
Was it a strong enough card that you actually need? I mean, disregard the returning of the Butcher because he was part of AEW, but did we need Adam Cole? Did we need Bryan Danielson? Did we need Ruby Soho? And that's actually quite an interesting question to put. So go on, I'll let you lead with it.
Thank you. Yeah, I was thinking about this because I think the natural cynicism in me is kind of saying, it was great, but what are people buzzing about afterwards? And I guess, yes, the tag match was something buzzing about, but mostly it was about the debuts. Now, whether or not they happened at the end, two of the biggest ones, I'm not sure. But yeah, let's take out the debuts of everyone and let's take that pay-per-view as it is. Now, how do you feel about that? Was it the best pay-per-view of the year? Or are people letting their feelings and that excitement about the debuts make it the best pay-per-view? AEW are getting maybe into a trap where each time now at pay-per-view we're expecting a big signing, a new signing. We're expecting more and more and more because it's just been like such a lot at the moment. And does that make a good pay-per-view in terms of matches? Interesting. So let's say we take out the debuts. All Out, does it beat my favorite Revolution? Do you know what I mean? Not so sure. So I just encourage the fans. I'd love to, and our listeners, I'd love to hear their views on, let's hear your mindset. Let's take out those debuts. Tell me what you think of the pay-per-view now. Was it still 5 stars or has it dropped? And I would argue, and again, this is not a knock on it at all because it was a great pay-per-view. Yes, I think it would go down slightly. People would have a different mindset had we not seen certain debuts, I think.
I disagree.
Okay.
And this is why we're here.
Yeah.
Absolutely. When this goes out, we'll be asking, what people think, but the only person that debuted in a match was CM Punk, which we saw the debut of beforehand. So I wouldn't class that as a debut.
Okay.
As a card, from top to bottom, everything told the story. It was solid.
Yeah.
The cherry on the top was the 3 debuts.
Yeah.
So Revolution was fantastic pay-per-view. I'm not going to dismiss that. But in my eyes, I think this year's All Out was nipping at its toes. Yeah. Not the best, but I think for what they had, with the circumstances that have been going on around the world, and to sell it out in such a way, and again, being in Chicago, which has helped. You've got loyal fans. You've got people that are there to love wrestling. I think it was up there with the best. I just think. Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. I think the debuts were lovely. I think you are right. Could we have gone without them? But I think for what I would class All Out as being one of their biggest pay-per-views, and for it to be the first proper one since bringing the fans back, I think. I think I'm a bit. To be honest, I'm a bit torn. I don't think it needed it. I don't think it needed the debuts, but I think it was the cherry on the. It was just a little bit of sprinkle, just to make it even. That ever so slightly sending you home. You've now just got two fantastic debuts in the space of a few minutes. You've got someone who has come back in a way that has worked really well with the Casino Battle Royal. But yeah, I think it's a good question to put out there, which we will do.
I think so.
I think it'd be nice to hear other people's views on this.
So we can agree on is though it was a packed pay-per-view. It was end-to-end. It flew by, and it was like nothing but like pretty good to great action all the way through. So yeah, to go back on myself slightly, I can't deny that it was a very good pay-per-view. Yeah, I just think people's feelings might be slightly twisted by the fact that their beloved, debuts are there, especially someone like Bryan Danielson. But if not at the pay-per-view, then when? I think they were going to save it for possibly the New York show. I think it's called Grand Slam, but that's not been the case now. And I think it was great to have like that heel debut and be like, the Elite are now unstoppable. And they're like, hold on. What about the best wrestler in the world, Bryan Danielson? And it did work perfectly for that, I think. But yeah, it's an interesting question. I'd like to put it out there, to say, okay, yeah, try and think of it without those debuts. Where do you rank this pay-per-view in the history of it?
Absolutely. So we'll end it on there. So as me and Big Chocky T have said, we'd like to hear your views on whether or not AEW, was it one of the best pay-per-views from AEW? 2, where would you rank it as an all-time best? If you're looking at everything, including WWE, is there anything that you think it's as good as? Just your thoughts anyway. And then also, would you think it would sit as high as it does if we didn't have the debuts of the 3 wrestlers we've mentioned? So I'd like to say thank you from Jolly, and thank you from Big Chocky T. I'm going to do this one. The Shark Boy to my Kuriman.
I thought you were going to go with the Penta to my Phoenix, but that's a bit on the nose. So yeah, I like that.
No, I'm fine. I'm trying to work it on both. So the Blade to my Picture.
Yeah.
The Matt to my Nick.
Yeah.
The Gallows to my Anderson. We'll go with that one.
Yeah, I like that. Even the Evans to my Angelico, but I will take it, yeah.
The Omega to my Callis.
Oh, see? I'm not attending you.
As we said, thank you very much for joining us on this review show. Yes, we're a little bit different, but hey, that's what wrestling podcasts are there for you to check out. We are on the socials, so if you're on Instagram, you can find us at Bear Chocky T. Twitter, Bear and Chocky T, and YouTube is the Bear and Chocky T's Wrestling Recap. And we'd just like again to say thank you very much for joining us on this whirlwind recap of what potentially could have been, if not the best AEW show that they've put out since the start. And yes, thank you very much for your time. Like, share, comment, subscribe to us. And again, as we've said at the beginning, join the John's Podcasting Network. There's an array of fantastic people out there with fantastic content for everyone to check out. And one last thing before we go, big shout out to Preston City Wrestling based in the UK. It's their 10th anniversary show this weekend. Fantastic wrestling. They've got the best of the British wrestling scene, as well as Chris Masters, or Chris Adonis from NWA, who was facing Doug Williams, who you may recall from the Impact TNA days. So big shout out to the guys at PCW for what was a fantastic show. So yeah, I'd just like to say thank you very much again to you all for coming on, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Take care.